how did you get involved with oil and gas? How did you make it to Houston? You know, before we got on the mic, you told me briefly that you've been here for 2.5 years, that when you came here, Harvey hit, you came and helped with Harvey. So I want to hear that story as well. But let's talk about how you came up with the idea for Sensoleak, how you identified this problem that the industry has, how you got down to Houston, how you helped out during Harvey. It's a lot of things to talk about. But
no, I need to make notes.
Yeah, she needs notes. Yeah.
Okay, so I got into oil and gas completely by accident, but let me back up first. So in 2010, while investing and mentoring startups and being on boards and whatnot, I decided I want my own startup. And I had this idea that if you combine a few things, you can actually identify the small defects before they escalate into critical failures. So I had this aha moment that if you treat a data or sets of data or large sets of data in a certain way, you can come up with something. And I said, well, I started developing something very kind of immature, GUI, and I tested it on helicopter engines. So helicopters are very dangerous. They have only one engine. If the engine is dead, you're dead.
That's why I don't ride in them.
Smart. But they do transmit a lot of data, all aircrafts. And I'm like, big data, dangerous thing. Let's see if we can predict or prevent some failures. And what happened is that my first prototype was able to give the pilot a 6-minute alert to abort before the plane crashed, if it was something that cannot be fixed while en route. Huge success. I'm like, okay, so it works. Now what do I do with that? I started, that's
like a massive achievement. You just like brushed right over it. Like
I know, because
I can save people's life like 6 minutes before it die. But
I know,
it
but
works.
it worked. And I'm like, okay, but I don't want to do helicopters. What do I want to do with that? Where would it be really like impactful? And I don't want to, the Israeli.
You didn't want to like go like sell that to Boeing or Bell.
Exactly. I didn't want to do. I'm like, I don't want to deal with those guys, Boeing and all of that. So I better go to what? Oil
it's only
and
a
gas?
multi-billion-dollar idea. It's not good enough.
I know. I say I was young and stupid. I guess now I'm just stupid. But I decided I want to do. I'm a millennial. I must have a purpose. I want to do something meaningful with that. What damages can we prevent? Like earthquakes or explosions or something. And I'm like, okay, I'll try it on different things. What else can I try it on? I'm like, okay, wind turbines looks like a good one. And also I could find some in Israel and some in Europe. Worked. I could really not prevent, but identify a small defect very early. And then I started using this on other machines, rotating machinery. It all worked. And then one of my co-R&D clients, they're like, can you develop something or do you have something like this for pipelines? I'm like, no idea what pipelines are in Israel. It's not really a big industry, but how hard can it be? Damn, it was hard. But I said, I will deliver. So I'm like, okay, I hired a bunch of, subject matter experts, flow assurance engineers, pipeline engineers. Like, can you please tell me where's the norm? They're like, oh, in oil and gas, no norm. There's like turbulent regimes, steady regimes. When it's turbulent, you cannot do pretty much anything. Or then like, why? But I started working on pipelines. I said, okay, if oil and gas is that difficult, let me start with water. One steady state, one density. And what do you know? I could identify a leak 2 weeks before it happened with a Netherlands company on a big main. And I'm like, oh, so something can be done on pipelines. So let us see what. From here to there, I started doing some research and managed to come up with a product that actually works on oil pipelines and multi-phase and all sorts of liquid pipelines. And 2016 was the first year I actually opened the company. So from 2010 to 2016, I was running R&D without an entity. Why? Because I was consulting and seeing so many startups fall just because they opened in the wrong time. Once you have an entity, money flies out. Lawyers, accountants, taxes, blah, 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 before you even had a chance to bring some money in. Mm-hmm. And I said, wait, when I open an entity, I want a product that's proven and commercializable. I want a client so that we're profitable from day one. And when I go to investors, I bring everything on a silver platter.
Yeah.
So 2016, it happened. I had my first client. We signed an agreement in Israel with the largest and pretty much the only operator. And I started traveling 250 days. Australia, Japan, Canada. I was knocking on doors. And I'm like, hey, here's what I do. Really? Or what are you talking about? Prediction, prevention. I'm like, no, let me just show you. They're like, okay, show me. I'm like, yeah, but I charge for that. So $200K, please.
Yeah.
And I guess I was nagging so badly they actually let me do that, like large companies. And then I decided I need to move from Israel. I cannot be traveling. You know, all I know is my suitcases, and I don't even know what's happening anymore, what time it is. Like, but we won a bunch of awards. So we were recognized as one of the 10 best IoT companies in Israel by the chief scientist, which is a big deal. He took us on a delegation to Japan. Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, took us on a delegation to Australia as one of the best energy companies. So we got a bunch of recognition, but it was still kind of early 4 years ago. Right now, it's like hype. Everybody says AI. Everybody wants it, knows it, or wants it. Mm-hmm. So I decided I need to have a different base. And I said, okay, Canada or US or Australia. And I decided US. Like, I loved America ever since I watched the first episode of Full House when I was like 6.
It's exactly what America's like, guys.
I know, right?
And
Good
old
I'm like,
genuine American classic right there.
I'm gonna be friends with Michelle. And by the way, we were born the same year, the Olsen twins and myself. So that was my dream. I mean, I'm gonna live there. And I'm going to meet Uncle Jesse, and we're going to go on a date. He's going to sing for me. Sure. So I said, okay, US. We're in the US. I'm like, okay, oil and gas, Houston. And I started telling people, hey, I'm going to go to Houston. I'm going to move there. I'm like, Houston? I don't know why Houston has such a better reputation, but we need to change that. I'm like, no, because oil and gas. They're like, go to California or Austin even. But why Houston? I'm like, this is where all my clients are. And I love Houston. Little did I know about floods, traffic, and all that.
That's just a couple of the problems. Every city has problems.
Yeah. So anyway, the date was August 2017. I'm already packed up, and I'm like, okay, I'm moving. Then I'll bring my dogs. I have a lot of things figured out. And like I said, I was supposed to come on a weekend of Harvey. And Harvey happened on Friday, technically. My flight was scheduled on a Saturday. And I remember looking at my suitcases and my luggage and everything is ready. And I'm watching, not the news, it was actually on a laptop or a phone. I'm watching American news and I'm like, what the hell is happening? In my head, Houston is my home now. And it's like my community got hurt. And I see people like on the streets and lines of people without homes, you know, all the damage. And I'm like, I cannot just sit here in Israel, you know, watch the sunset. I really need to do something. So I donated as much as I could to FEMA, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
FEMA.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And I said, it's not enough. I need to do something. And I started calling my airline. And they're like, put me somewhere around San Antonio, put me in Dallas, put me in Louisiana. I'll drive. I already drove several times from Louisiana to Houston. And they're like, no, we cannot. I mean, and then on Tuesday, airports opened here and I could land. And I remember that it was the first time I rented the car. It was the first time the roads were empty, like from the airport. Mm-hmm. And then you get stuck, you know, around Memorial. Because, and I randomly went to different churches, synagogues and whatnot, and I said, hey, I want to volunteer. They assigned me to a group of people. We went to homes, tore down walls, floors, doors, removed furniture. I don't know who the people were. I don't know. Right now, I don't know where in Houston it was because I didn't know the city. And I just remembered the first one was Kingwood area. Yeah. Second Baptist, like large church. Yeah. I remember the campus. And I always had in my car blankets and bottled water so that I can give, you know, to random people. And so during the day, we would go and, you know, help people in homes. And during the nights, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., I would do a shift with the Red Cross. I believe in a church in Copperfield. There were 287 people there. It was like a shelter. Yeah. And I was, it was as hard as it was to see people, you know, who lost everything and who had very little even before that. What kept me going and what made me really happy was to see the trucks loaded with donated clothes, like everything, every single item from toothbrushes to children's books. They were just bringing this to the shelter. And I'm like, so there are good people in the world.
I think that's so important to remember right now because so my family lives up in Kingwood and luckily they didn't flood or anything. But whenever Harvey had hit, I'd known a guy with a boat. And so we'd actually went and dropped a boat on Highway 59 in like 35 feet of water to go help. And the problem that we saw over there was that there was so many people helping that it was like, there was madness because there was no communication. Like cell towers were down, the police station had flooded, things like that. But I think now when it seems to me that the nation, or at least what the media and social media are telling you, is more divided than ever, I think we need to look back on times like Harvey, particularly in our community here, where we had people from everywhere, from a lot of different cities, a lot of different states around coming. You know, Collin was out on a John boat for like 48 hours straight.
I got a staph infection.
Yeah, I got a staph infection. You know, I think we saw the best of people. And I think that Houston especially is full of just great people. Despite like everything that you see and despite everything that you're hearing on social media and stuff. But I think we have a great community. And I think it shows in times like that regardless what your political beliefs and shit like that is, like it doesn't matter. Like we're all in this together in this community. And I think we need to remember that, especially in times like now.
You brought up a good point, you know, talking about the external facing publicity that Houston has, because people are like, why would you move to Houston, move to California? I've lived in Houston for 6 years now and I'm sold on Houston. I love Houston. I think it's the city of opportunity. I think it's the coolest place in America right now because of the diverse population that we have here. There's so many different people with different experiences. And I think that's it's just very special in the way that it all melts together. But you look at Hurricane Harvey, and Hurricane Harvey was like the nail in the coffin for me. I was like, that's why I'm sold on Houston, just because it was a very special time. It's even hard to articulate how special it was unless you were out there helping people and just seeing the abundance. You know, I have a story that I haven't really got to tell, and I'll have to tell it some other time. But I mean, we had trailers from West Texas oil field service companies that they were in contact with me, just sending trailers and trailers full of supplies for the shelters. I mean, there's just special time, right? And you may not see that in other places of the United States or the world. And I think that's what makes Houston and the surrounding areas so special.
It was amazing because like the people I was sharing the shifts in the Red Cross with in the Copperfield church, none of them was from Houston. New Jersey, North Carolina, Washington, D.C. and Washington State. And, you know, I'm like, and you came here? Yeah, we're a disaster relief team. And that's how I joined the Red Cross disaster relief. We're just here to help. And people left their jobs, their families, their everything to come and volunteer for people they don't know, you know, and I don't know, probably some of them were paid or at least for the travel, but technically we weren't. Volunteering is all about not getting paid, you know, the reward is the help you give.
Yeah.
And that I was sold, I guess, in Houston back then too. I'm like, wow, so lines of people. I'm like, are they waiting for food or what? And now I volunteer with the Houston Food Bank. So I'm like, okay, were those lines for food? No, those are lines to volunteer. People are waiting in line to be assigned to an assignment to go and help other people.
Yeah.
It just, I feel right now goosebumps and my heart kind of widens. I'm like, yes, this is the world we live in. This is the world we should be living in. And yes, to your comment, I guess the media wants to divide the people or wants to make things more interesting, quote unquote. Yeah. But people are people. I mean, I'm pretty sure that even though, you know, the different political views or whatever differences we have, when Harvey hits, we're all in this together. Yep. It doesn't matter if you vote for this or for that, or you like this or that, or you're against this or that. People will always be people. So Absolutely. It's important to remember. I hope Harvey will never come to prove this. Yeah. But if we are aware of that, maybe we'll do something ourselves proactively to get the nation together, united, rather than...
Absolutely. So that was a hell of a welcoming party for you coming to Houston. You know, it's like, hey, at least to set the expectations for you that you're going to have to deal with flooding here. So, you know, I thought it was really interesting too how you said all your clients are here, because there's even we have friends that are startup founders in oil and gas, and they're based out of Austin or DFW, and they're making weekly trips to Houston. So I always give them some flack. I'm like, all your clients are here. Why are you not based here? And you wouldn't have to be driving down here every week. And
Talent.
so I think it's really important to be here and to help contribute to this ecosystem that's growing in Houston.